saying stone in the hat to produce the Book of Mormon. Emma's last testimony was published in October 1879 in the Saints Herald. But she also said that Joseph Smith never had plural wives. So what the heck is going on here, folks? And then others will be like, I know, Joseph didn't have plural wives. Why is our history so messed up? Even worse than like United States history and history on the founding fathers of our nation and the drafting, you know, how the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence came about. And, you know, why our church history when records were so important to Joseph and others? Scholars can be wrong. Duh, right? We talked about it before. We have reacted to scholars. We have disagreed with scholars. We praise scholars at times. There are scholars with strong testimonies of the gospel of Jesus Christ. There are scholars that come across as being cynical. Cynics in the church. Scholars can be right and scholars can be wrong. We have scrutinized scholars in the past. We often admire their intelligence and expertise, but that doesn't mean they always get it right. Right? For instance, Jonathan Neville, we've been talking to him lately, and he's got his own ideas about the Urim and Thummim being used and not seer stones. I'm kind of looking at it. I've never had a stance. I still don't have a complete stance on that. Don't know if I ever will. But it's interesting, to say the least. I'm looking at the pros and the cons. For instance, did you know from 1850 to 2020, Jonathan showed me a graph where the Urim and Thummim, it talks about the Urim and Thummim and how many times has been mentioned in General Conference. In the 1850s, it was 19 times. In the 1860s, it was 14 times. And then lo and behold, in 1870s, 83 times. That's because the seer stone narrative was being thrown around. That's right. So the leaders were speaking against who they said the information was coming from, which were faithless people and critics of the church, even those within. Did you know that the 1880s, it went down to 24 times? So 1870s, 83 times, Urim and Thummim is mentioned against seer stone. Then in 1890s, 10 times. 1900s, 6 times. The 1910s, 3 times. 1920s, 4 times. 1930s, twice. 1940s, once. It wasn't an issue. 1960s, it went up there. Well, the 50s, it was 3, and then 15 times in the 60s. From the 70s all the way up until 2020, only 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 times Urim and Thummim was mentioned in General Conference. 2020s on up, it's been 0. Did you know that Richard Bushman truncated that Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith said that the Urim and Thummim was used in translation? Prominent LDS scholars, intellectuals, whatever you call them, continue to promote the stone in the hat, right? In movies, videos, podcasts, articles, illustrations, etc. All without educating Latter-day Saints about the all relevant historical evidence that establishes and corroborates what Joseph and Oliver taught about the translation with the Urim and Thummim. The Gospel Topics essay doesn't even quote Joseph and Oliver. And like I said, truncated by yours truly, Richard Bushman. And Richard has made references to Jonathan Neville, saying that he's probably the only guy that could convince him. Well, Jonathan makes good points. And Richard is looking at that. And so are some other brethren in the church and others and scholars. It's possible that the narrative could change again. So what does that tell you about scholarship in the church? No, it has nothing to do with your testimony, but bear with me. So, yes, all without educating Latter-day Saints about the all relevant historical evidence that establishes and corroborates what Joseph and Oliver taught about the Urim and Thummim. And the Gospel Topics essay doesn't even quote Joseph and Oliver apart from one truncated excerpt, but instead relies on statements by others and the speculations of scholars. Saints' book and Rough Stone Rolling omits what Joseph and Oliver said about the translation in favor of what others said, along with the speculations of scholars stated as fact. Now, why the Seer Stone narrative? Well, and this is the reason why in the 1870s it was mentioned 83 times in General Conference, because between 1870 and 1880, David Whitmer, who did not help in the translation, he was not a scribe in translating from the gold plates as Joseph dictated from his mouth. David Whitmer didn't do that. But he gave interviews in which he claimed Joseph never used the Urim and Thummim, but instead used the stone in the hat to produce the Book of Mormon. Now, did he get that from other people? I don't know. Emma's last testimony, but here's the thing. So I'm not going to just agree with Neville, Jonathan Neville, because he's coming from another stance. He's coming from another POT, right? Point of view. He's coming from another POV. He's saying that Emma could be discredited. So we got David Whitmer saying stone in the hat to produce the Book of Mormon. Emma's last testimony was published in October 1879 in the Saints Herald. But she also said that Joseph Smith never had plural wives. So what the heck is going on here, folks? And then others will be like, I know Joseph didn't have plural wives. Why is our history so messed up? Even worse than like United States history and history on the founding fathers of our nation and the drafting, how the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence came about. And, why our church history when records were so important to Joseph and others? Well, does that mean the Holy Ghost has to? I think the Father's trying to tell us something, and that's my theory. But I'm going to tell you why in just a second after I say this, why the Urim and Thummim thing is so strong. And I'm going to tell you why in a second. And I said this to Jonathan Neville, and Jonathan's like, wow, I didn't even think of it that way. And I said, yeah, if you use my idea, you better cite me, buddy. But here's the deal. So we've got Emma's last words saying to her son, Joseph III, who became the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now it is the Community of Christ, but he was the president of the church. He interviewed his mother. Later, Joseph III said that Joseph used the Urim and Thummim after Emma told him that it was the stone in the hat. Now, Emma did scribe for Joseph, but did she see how he even translated? Was there a partition? The only person that maybe even saw the Urim and Thummim was Oliver Cowdery, because he attempted to translate. And he said it was with the spectacles, the Nephite interpreters. Joseph called them spectacles. And they both called them Urim and Thummim. So where in the heck do we go? And does it matter? November 15th, 1879, the Saints Herald published an interview with J.L. Trauber Jr., who referred to the last testimony. He said, why did not Mrs. Bideman, Emma, not say that so that was her last name, but Emma Smith, say that Joseph translated by the aid of Urim and Thummim. The reason is obvious in the light of the facts to which I have briefly alluded. This is J.L. Trauber Jr. speaking. He goes on to say, because Joseph translated with a stone, a seer stone, not two clear stones set in the rims of a bow. Thus we see that Mr. Morris and Mrs. Bideman both agree that Joseph Smith used a stone and not Urim and Thummim, nor interpreters either. Now, I haven't even gotten to Martin Harris, but hold on a second. And then he goes on to say, well, those who hold the Urim and Thummim story to be correct, he's speaking of Emma, still continue to give the lie to David Whitmer, Michael Morris, and Mrs. Emma Bideman? Or will they have the courage to admit that those who have held high positions have been guilty of gross fabrication? Now, Martin Harris is on a train in his old age, and a Mr. Stevenson is interviewing him and asks him, Martin, in his old age, some say that he could have had dementia too, which has nothing to do with his statement. Like, they didn't say that because of the statement. He says it's that he tells the story of switching the stones. But Jonathan brings up a good point. That's ridiculous. How do you go out in the mud of the river, find a stone exactly like the one Joseph had, and then switch them, and then Joseph saying something that sounds so staged that it's as dark as Egypt? But we also rely on the testimony of the three witnesses, and two of those witnesses are Martin Harris and David Whitmer, who say it's the stone, but Oliver Cowdery, who attempted to translate, saying it was the Urim and Thummim. David didn't translate. David never scribed for Joseph. So we've got Harris's testimony against Oliver. Now, Oliver and Joseph say it's the Urim and Thummim. So what's going on here? We got Emma's testimony against Joseph and Oliver. We've got Martin Harris's testimony against Joseph and Oliver. And then we have a Whitmer gathering in the family home where Joseph is demonstrating with the stone in the hat. This is how I translate. Jonathan Neville says that maybe he is demonstrating a likeness on how he translates with the Urim and Thummim because of the sacredness of the nature of the thing. He's saying, well, we all believe in stone, but because seer stones were so pervasive at that time and in the area, Joseph said, well, it's kind of like this. This is what I do. That's Jonathan's. Now, you ready for mine? And there's much more. I haven't even gotten into all the other theories and all the corroborating evidence. But I said this, when the three witnesses were shown, and it's funny how all three of these men had different ideas, right, about the translation. But I think that only one of them actually saw how Joseph translated, and it was the one that the Lord allowed to try to translate, or Joseph, right? Oliver was told he would be permitted to translate the Book of Mormon in section 8. In section 8, he was instructed how to receive an understanding of the translation. So I believe he was the only one that actually witnessed how the prophet translated. I think it's possible that Emma and Martin Harris and others and Joseph just used the stone in the hat to demonstrate kind of how he translates. I know I'm reaching too. But why it's stronger evidence because Oliver and Joseph say Urim and Thummim. Oliver attempts to translate in section 8. And they both say it was by means of Urim and Thummim. Even today, some scholars argue that certain ancient civilizations couldn't have achieved great architectural wonders without extraterrestrial help, right? while it's an intriguing idea, there's little evidence to support it. It's essential to remember that scholars are human too, susceptible to biases and limited by their understanding of the world. They may have access to vast amounts of information, but that doesn't guarantee infallibility. Brothers and sisters, what I'm saying is we've got this seer stone narrative. The missionaries today don't even teach Urim and Thummim anymore. I taught it in the early 90s on my mission, full-time mission. And now I'm hearing through the grapevine from prominent people, and I give you my word, I'm not making this up, that could change again. It's possible that we could be, through some of what the brethren and other scholars believe, this could change again. Why do we go from one thing to other and it's not popular anymore? It's because of groupthink. Now listen to this. By questioning what scholars present as facts, we become active participants in the pursuit of knowledge. Only through critical thinking and analysis can we separate fact from fiction. And that's it. Emma said it was the stone, but she said Joseph wasn't a polygamist. And then Joseph III, who interviewed his mother, doesn't go by his mother's statement. He says it's by means of Urim and Thummim. So we've got things all over the place, but hear me out. It's by the power of the Holy Ghost. That's why I believe our history is kind of screwy. But here's the thing. Let me get back to the testimony of the three witnesses. I forgot to tell you this. When they see when the angel presents all the exhibits, exhibit A is, let's say, the plates. Exhibit B is the breastplate. Exhibit C are the Nephite interpreters. Exhibit D is the Liahona. And exhibit E, am I leaving anything out? Is the sword of Laban. They see all of these things. These are evidences. I told Jonathan Neville, and he was an attorney. I said that the Urim and Thummim is part of this, is an exhibit. So the angel is saying these are the evidences of translation, of the evidence of that this really happened. This is evidence. So why is he showing the Urim and Thummim if the seer stones were used? That would make God a liar. That is the hugest thing. And I came up with that. That is evidence. The angel's presenting exhibits A through E. I think it's E. He's saying, this is evidence to you three witnesses. Out of the mouth of two or three witnesses shall every word be established. And one of the bits of evidence, and one of the exhibits here of the evidence from the vault in heaven is the Urim and Thummim, the Nephite interpreters, the spectacles, the holy spectacles that Oliver and Joseph said they used to translate. And we know from section 8 that Oliver did try to translate. I think this is serious stuff here, folks. It does mean something. So why would the angel show this part of evidence? He would be showing seer stones. So what by questioning what scholars present as facts, we become active participants in the pursuit of knowledge. Only through critical thinking and analysis can we separate fact from fiction. So let's not blindly accept everything Jonathan says or everything Richard Bushman says. Let's challenge all the scholars' assumptions. Let's explore all our alternatives. Like I said, I came up with this evidence room thing. The angels presenting the evidence like in a court of law, and be open to new possibilities. And we know it's by the power of the Holy Ghost, but I think that's why our history is faulty and confusing, because it's all got to be based. We need to develop a testimony by the power of the Holy Ghost. So explore those alternatives and be open to new possibilities, because this is groupthink, how these guys work. How do you think some LDS scholars feel when it's their ideas? When it's their ideas versus the narrative? maybe even something that makes more sense to them, but it's their job security and peer approval that they're thinking of. It's called groupthink, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous for the church to be in that. Groupthink occurs when a group prioritizes agreement and harmony over critical thinking and independent thoughts, even when the agreement might not appear completely harmonious with the truth. And it can lead to poor decision making. It can lead to flawed ideas and missed opportunities. No doubt. Imagine a CES, church education system, even or BYU religious studies, where everyone is afraid to speak up against the old mentor's flawed theories. Some old emeritus status professor, or a group of scholars who all decide to not mention a statement made by Oliver Cowdery because nobody wants to rock the boat when publishing Gospel Topics essay. They truncated what he said, and Richard Bushman left it out. These scenarios may seem harmless, but they can have serious consequences, and they already are. They already are. Joseph Fielding Smith and Bruce R. McConkie said that believing that Camorra in Mexico could make a lot of people leave the church. I'm paraphrasing, but it happened. And why did not very many people leave over the Urim and Thummim when that was taught? But then all of a sudden, seer stones made a whole bunch of people leave. Groupthink stifles alternate plausibilities, innovation, and diversity of thought. When everyone is thinking the same way, no one is challenging assumptions. Nope. Or exploring alternate perspectives. This can be detrimental in the church. History has shown us the dangers of blindly following a narrative deemed doctrinal, right? Or a leader or an ideology. Orson Pratt was censured many times in the past by Brigham Young because of the things he said. They didn't get along. A lot of those things were his ideas. Brigham Young was wrong for 30 years when he taught the Adam God theory. So what can we do to combat groupthink? By the way, the Adam God theory didn't affect, it still said there was a Godhead the way we believe it today, but it was just who Adam was. First, we must encourage individuality and independent thinking. By valuing diverse viewpoints and welcoming dissenting opinions, we can conquer blind spots and improve decision making. No doubt. Don't be afraid to be the voice of reason, even if it means going against the next new thing. The next new thing, jabby jabby, or the bandwagon. And let me tell you, I almost died of COVID. So I'm still, I didn't get the jab ever to this day, and I'm fine. I can go anywhere I want. Never got it. I got sick with COVID, and that was the perfect antibody. Seek out different perspectives and challenge even your own assumptions. And in conclusion, you may be surprised by what you discover. It might just be the truth. But it also depends on what a so-called educator or scholar is motivated by, right? Follow those who are seeking the truth. Don't follow those who are motivated by money, position, or power. And I mean that even in the scholarly world. Use the power and gift of discernment. Use discernment as well as sound reason. And remember, the angel would not have given the evidence that's evidence that Joseph used the Urim and Thummim. He's saying, look, this is how it was done, and it was done. Here's all the exhibits in front of you.
That you can't stop for too long. Got to keep going.